Well, the president of El Salvador is joining the Trump administration in doubling down on not planning to return a man mistakenly deported to a notorious gang prison. He visited the White House yesterday and said he does not have the power to return Abrego Garcia. The Maryland man, who is an illegal immigrant, was taken into ICE custody and deported to El Salvador. Now, this is despite the U.S. Supreme Court ordering the Trump administration to facilitate his return. Now, El Salvador's president called the idea of bringing back Garcia preposterous, going on to say, "How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States." So joining us now, our chief legal analyst, Khalif Rhodes, to break this all down for us. Khalif, there's a lot to get through. So let's start with the El Salvadorian's president's claim that he doesn't have the power to do so. Does he?
He absolutely does. I mean, he's a person that's held in his jail, or I should say prison. This individual's there. If he is in charge of the country, just like President Trump here, he would have some control or authority, and I would say he'd probably have more control there. Now, getting him to this country, I would assume that he'd have the power to put him on a plane in El Salvador to send him to the United States. Now, his entry, guaranteeing his entry into the United States, I think that's where his power would stop, and then the power of the United States would actually take over. And that's kind of where the Supreme Court, Sotomayor's request that the government facilitate his return, I think that's where it would take over. Having the conversations with El Salvador, figuring out how they can coordinate and interact with making sure that he gets out of the prison, gets on the plane, and then the final facilitation point would be him coming to United States soil and getting entry without any barriers. None of that will be the effectuate. That's the part that the Supreme Court didn't like. Remember, the U.S. District Court judge said, you guys need to facilitate and effectuate his return. Sotomayor said, you guys may have overstepped by telling them to effectuate, but you need to facilitate. That need to facilitate was something, not a suggestion, but a court order. The Trump administration is saying, well, great, we'll facilitate, but we can't force. We can't force El Salvador to do something. And better yet, this court doesn't have the authority to force the president to do something in another country or have foreign relations or diplomatic relations direct the president how to do those things.
Khalif, as far as following the court's orders here, this is something that we've seen from the Trump administration, where the Trump administration says, I hear you, but I'm not going to listen. At what point, though, do we have a serious conversation about the Supreme Court saying, this is a Supreme Court order you have to follow?
I think it has to be some harsher orders coming from the court, giving clearer guidance on what to do and what not to do with this administration. Specifically, you don't want to infringe and impede on the executive branch's power. You don't. But you want to be clear that orders aren't optional, that orders aren't something that you can make a decision to follow at your disposal. You know, today I'll follow them, tomorrow I won't. I'll pick the orders that I like and I'll disregard the orders that I don't like. The court was pretty clear. And if we're looking at the problematic portion of this entire thing, it doesn't make us a better country. If we're taking a book out of President Trump's campaign speeches, if we're attempting to make America great again, this isn't doing it. Disregarding the rule of law, ignoring a unanimous Supreme Court decision, and subjecting individuals to being detention or deportation, that's not making us a better country. Regardless of how you feel about this person, I think sometimes miss the mark of what's happening. If they're an asylum seeker, yeah, we have these buckets that we attempt, or I think we should put people in that come and attempt to immigrate into our country. You have folks that are coming here illegally. But if you're seeking asylum, there is a portion with our law that allows asylum seekers to find refuge here. That portion is supposed to be upheld. That's a part of the law that we have for years upheld. Now we're fighting that portion because now there is a whole attack on immigration, and we're dumping everyone into the same bucket, and I think that's the problematic portion.
I do want to talk about what he also mentioned about taking homegrown citizens and putting them in El Salvador, but I do want to say, if you are Kilmar Abrego Garcia's attorney, what are you saying right now? What rights does he have? How do you move forward?
I mean, I'll be honest, the worst thing to ever be as an attorney is completely lost.
Right.
And so oftentimes in law school, they tell you, if you don't know the answer, tell your clients, I will research it, I'll figure it out, and I'll get back with you. That's the best answer instead of lying or making up something. In a situation like this, where there's no precedent, where there's no guidance, where there's nowhere for you to turn to kind of look. We haven't been in a situation like this where the Supreme Court has said one thing, the president is saying, I'm going to disregard that, or at least not help facilitate it as I should. I don't know what his next steps are, and I don't think he has a place to look. You can attempt to go back to the Supreme Court and say they're not facilitating it, but I don't think you'll get an answer from there. So I think his attorney is maybe lost for words right now, but his only response is going back to the same place that sent the facilitation order and say, tell him more, give him guidance, give them a better map on what facilitation looks like. Define it clearer for him.
And we've already heard from Marco Rubio that he believes the president should set it, not the court. So we'll see what happens here. Getting back to what I said about the president's comments about looking into sending homegrown citizens to El Salvador's prison, we have the 8th Amendment, which protects you against cruel and unusual punishment. You would have to get consent from a U.S. citizen, even though they are a prisoner, right? They've committed a horrendous crime, to send them overseas.
There's so many issues with that process. I mean, it's laughable, but I will say I'm not surprised by those types of comments, because this administration has made statements like that that are kind of outside the realm.
Sure.
And then you've seen take actions towards attempting to do that. Things that you would think that were unconscionable are now on the table. In this situation, we have to stop normalizing some of these things. We're talking about taking American citizens outside of the country to go serve time in another. So as you mentioned, cruel and unusual punishment, I think would be the first thing. Due process, any type of opportunity to be heard in an American court would be removed, because if we're looking at this last argument, the Trump administration would say, well, we don't have any rights there. So now we've shipped you over to this other country and we can't tell them what to do. So now you don't even have a right to come back for your hearing. But I think even if all that's off the table, Trump himself signed a act recently that talked about ensuring that folks could have access to their family and put them in a prison that's closer to them for the rehabilitation and the reintegration process when they get released from prison. Well, now, if you're saying that these folks can be sent 500 miles away,
right,
600 miles away, well, that doesn't put them closer, and you just signed this. So I am confused on how we got to now this place where this is working for non-citizens. We should make it work for all these other folks. I think the Supreme Court, if this occurs, this will be an opportunity for them to clearly say the president doesn't have authority to deport U.S. citizens first, cruel and unusual punishment second, and then his own words used against him, I think, would be something that would stop that from occurring. But again, everything right now is on the table.
There we go. Remains to be seen the ever-evolving Trump administration and the stretch of the executive branch of our government. Khalif, thank you for breaking that down for us.